Hello everyone, in today's video we'll be watching Salaryman ga Isekai, a currently airing anime. If you want me to bring the next episode next week, please like the video and comment below, as it really helps with the channel's engagement. Also, don't forget to subscribe. We're aiming for 100,000 subscribers, and I count on you. The story begins with a demon lord gathering the 4 generals of his army. Thus we see Ulmandra, Sylphid, Gnome, and the one who will become part of the army's conviction force to rule the world, the newly chosen and summoned from another world, Denosuke Uchimura. Going back in time, we see the protagonist's previous life. He was an insignificant salaryman who started working with a heart full of hope, but while his colleagues were constantly promoted, his work went unrecognized. One day, he received orders to transfer abroad, and the protagonist knew it was a graveyard for losers. Arriving at the new workplace, Denosuke tried to work well, asking for more equipment and manpower because the place was in a poor state. However, his boss ignored him, yet the protagonist continued to strive and work hard. Until one day, seeing him work so hard, the employees helped him, and everything was going well, but Denosuke was transferred to another country. As his work was never recognized, the protagonist wondered why he was doing all this, and it was at that moment that he was hit by a vehicle and sent to another world. Upon arrival, the demon lord said Denosuke would work as an international manager, and incredibly, he had the protagonist's complete resume, showing everything he had done in the past. Additionally, the demon lord told Denosuke that he would have various benefits, which, when stated, impressed the protagonist because it seemed too good to be true. The demon lord said he could refuse and be sent back to his world, which made Denosuke realize that the demon respected workers' rights. Thus, the protagonist remembered everything he went through in his world, and he was so traumatized that he believed himself to be worthless, so he said he thought someone as important as the demon lord wouldn't need him. However, the boss told Denosuke to stop talking nonsense and said he saw how hard he worked, which is why he wanted him in his army and needed him. Suddenly, Ulmandra said she was against hiring such a weak human because she didn't understand how he could serve as one of the elite 4 generals. The others were also against it, so the demon lord thought of testing Denosuke's skills. This scared the protagonist a lot because he had no special powers, and when Ulmandra charged at him, the demon lord stopped her. Denosuke had fainted from fear, and the boss explained he was just an ordinary human. When she discovered that the demon lord wanted to make a simple human a general, she found it unacceptable. Gnome commented that the demon army was composed of monsters, and if a human without powers entered a power struggle between demons and demi-humans, he would be eaten alive immediately. Furthermore, we learn that Ulmandra and Gnome have a rivalry because each belongs to one of the groups. The demon lord said that it was because of this friction that he wanted Denosuke in his army, as he hoped the protagonist could bring peace between the 2 races. Suddenly, he woke up, and the boss said he wasn't looking for physical strength, so he would give him a suitable test. Currently, the demon army is trying to make a pact with some neighboring tribes. However, the Minotaur tribe is making things difficult, meaning the protagonist's mission will be to make a pact with this tribe, which terrified Denosuke. The demon lord wants the protagonist to use his negotiation skills to gain the Minotaur's trust and welcome them into the demon army. For more details, he told Denosuke to ask Ulmandra for help, but she didn't seem to want to cooperate with the protagonist. Having no confidence in himself, Denosuke believed he was a useless salaryman without special powers, so he saw no way to become an elite general. However, he always wanted to work for a boss who truly needed him. So upon seeing that the demon lord had confidence in his success, Denosuke decided to make an effort. They arrived at the room where the Minotaur tribe's chief was staying, and Ulmandra told him to be careful not to get trampled to death, even though it seemed she really wanted that to happen. Seeing Terius, Denosuke was terrified, and Ulmandra said she would show him how negotiations were done there. The protagonist was amazed to see that his senior would help him, but she soon started fighting with the Minotaur, and Denosuke realized she was a terrible negotiator. Leaving the room, she said she couldn't make any progress in the negotiations, yet, like the protagonist, we could see it was all her fault. Thus, Ulmandra left, and the Minotaur seemed angrier than before, making Denosuke even more scared. So, he went to a bar to drink a bit and think about what to do. Denosuke remembered when a client refused to cooperate, and he was about to give up, but upon looking into the man's eyes, he understood what he wanted. With this, the protagonist realized that if he wanted to be hired, he couldn't be afraid. After talking once more with the demon lord, Ulmandra went to see how the new employee was doing, but she found him handling the hay in front of the Minotaur's room, something the monster wanted to take inside but she didn't allow. She didn't understand what he was doing, so the protagonist explained, and Ulmandra realized Denosuke no longer had the look of a weakling as before. The next day, upon going to Terius's room, she saw all the hay scattered on the floor and thought the negotiations had failed. She was very angry because she thought the protagonist had dirtied their sacred castle, and Terius was no longer there. Then, Denosuke said the Minotaur was in the process of making a pact with the demon lord. Ulmandra couldn't believe he managed to do it in just one night, so the protagonist explained what he did. She believed Terius was refusing to negotiate because he was always saying no, but as he had experienced in his past life, the protagonist knew Terius wanted to talk more deeply about the conditions because, in some cultures, being emotional and passionate is good, hence the misunderstanding. Additionally, it's common courtesy for the Minotaur tribe to bring hay to their room when staying over because they don't want to break the provided bed, given their large bodies. So, by not letting him do that, Terius had to sleep on the floor, which further explains why he was irritated. Thus, Ulmandra began to feel bad for not trying harder to understand the other person, but Terius appeared and said it wasn't entirely her fault because he also didn't understand, so they both made amends. With Terius's departure, the demon lord said this was Denosuke's talent, picking up on things people usually don't notice. Then, after saying he did a good job, the boss welcomed the protagonist as the new member of the Elite Four Generals. Ulmandra was also convinced, and when Denosuke raised his arm, he received a golden bracelet and, performing Ulmandra's clan's greeting with her, we see the girl no longer saw him the same way, and thus, the protagonist officially joined the demon army. The next day, the protagonist still couldn't believe he had been summoned to another world. He noticed that the command structure of the place was very well organized and was happy to have an office of his own. Having accepted the job, Denosuke knew there was a certain business etiquette he needed to practice, so he planned to properly greet the other generals he hadn't yet met. With this in mind, he went to Sylphid's office but found a very beautiful girl. She said her name was Belinda and she was Sylphid's assistant. She also mentioned that Sylphid couldn't talk at the moment, and when the door closed, Ulmandra appeared because the Demon King had a new mission for him. The king wanted the protagonist to negotiate with the Ogre clan, as they needed to collaborate with the semi-human clans in the region to gain even more strength. The ogres have considerable influence and a military force as powerful as theirs, acting as leaders towards some surrounding races. Thus, it would be very beneficial for them to unite, especially since it would be bad for the ogres to become enemies of the demon army. Basically, it's as if the protagonist needed to negotiate with a business competitor, and since it's a difficult task, the Demon King believes Denosuke is the only one capable of completing it. Concerned for him, Ulmandra said she would go along and seemed very excited to work with the protagonist once again. Discussing this, Denosuke said he would like to visit Nome, as she leads the semi-human forces. However, Ulmandra said she wouldn't go with him to prepare their carriage, so Denosuke thought it was a great idea to expedite things, even though she just didn't want to meet Nome. Upon reaching the woman, he saw that her men were very well trained, and when Nome came to talk to him, Denosuke got straight to the point, so she began talking about the ogres. Nome said that Ogure, the ogre chief, is a complicated opponent and is treated like a dictator by his adversaries. Before continuing, she asked Denosuke to remove that thing from near her, referring to Ulmandra. They started arguing as usual, so the protagonist began to understand that they didn't like each other. Heading to the mission, the two went to the ogre territory, and Ulmandra was very impatient because they were taking too long to attend to them. Suddenly, a girl appeared to take them to the leader, and while walking, Ulmandra told the protagonist not to show any weakness. Upon reaching the leader, when she tried to start the conversation, Ogure told her to be quiet because he hadn't given permission for anyone to speak. He said he knew why they were there, to surrender to the ogre army, and said he would accept on one condition: they bring him the Demon King's head. This made Ulmandra furious, but Denosuke held her back and, with a smile, asked for time to think it over and thanked the ogre leader for taking the time to see them. Outside, she was fuming, wanting to end the ogre chief's life, so the protagonist explained what was happening. He understood that Ogure didn't intend to negotiate but, as a leader, wanted to avoid unnecessary conflicts, so he was trying to provoke her to make it seem like it was her fault the negotiation failed. Denosuke was also angry but knew it could harm his king if he showed his rage, so he decided the best strategy was to step back a little. While discussing what to do, that same girl from before appeared. Her name is Alulu, and she is Ogre's daughter, but she asked for help to remove her father from the throne. She took them to the food storage and explained that in the past, her people had great influence with other clans, but now they are facing financial problems, and some clans are struggling to find food. Denosuke had already noticed this because he saw the soldiers' armor was in poor condition and the castle seemed lifeless, something very common to see in large companies heading towards bankruptcy. Alulu believes the only way to rebuild the ogre clan is with the help of the demon army, but her father won't listen, and besides, he is sick. This is why they made the two wait so long for the audience. She knows if her father suddenly dies, they will have an even bigger problem, so she wants to dethrone him. Denosuke said he understood how she felt, but she was being too reckless because a member of an organization shouldn't talk about internal matters so easily. The protagonist gave the girl a lesson and pointed out where she was wrong, which made her happy, so much so that she said she was very good at judging people's character, which is why she knew he was a good man. Thus, Alulu asked the protagonist to marry her and become the new clan chief. This shocked Denosuke, and Ulmandra was furious to see another girl approaching him, so she asked for time to discuss the matter. In his office, the protagonist was thinking about how to resolve the situation, but not reaching a conclusion. He went to the bar, where Ulmandra was also present. She was arguing with the barkeep about which animal was the strongest, but even though they hadn't reached a decision, it helped the protagonist find a solution. The next day, as they were about to leave, Denosuke told Ulmandra they wouldn't go to the ogre clan and would explain more about the plan on the way. 2 weeks later, Ogure called the two there and seemed very angry, so we discovered what the protagonist had done. He recruited clans from other races that were also having problems because they were supported by the ogre clan but no longer received this assistance. With this, they annexed the neighboring territory of the ogre clan, and Denosuke had used this strategy some time ago to do business with a large company. Proud Ogure was furious, and that's what the protagonist wanted, so seeing the ogre chief less logical, he used his ace in the hole. Alulu entered the room and said she helped prepare the negotiations with the neighboring clans. She told her father their top priority should be the lives and future of the semi-humans, and the only way to do that was with the help of the Demon King's army. Ogure still didn't want to accept that, so Denosuke asked if he would like to form an alliance instead of an annexation. Since the Demon King allows the clan's autonomy to act, an annexation isn't much different from an alliance, but the way it's phrased makes all the difference when dealing with such a proud leader. Thus, Ogure said he would consider the proposal, and they left, and the chief was happy to see how his daughter had grown. A few days later, Ulmandra rushed to tell the protagonist that the alliance was a success, and Denosuke was very busy because the Demon King told him to have a subordinate, and the protagonist had no idea whom to choose. Ulmandra suggested picking randomly, but Denosuke didn't believe he should do that and said it would be much easier if he could choose her. Thinking about becoming his partner, she felt embarrassed, even though the protagonist only said that because she was the only friend he had there. Suddenly, Alulu appeared because she was sent as a representative of the ogre clan for the alliance with the Demon King's army. Ulmandra became jealous once again, and Alulu was very happy with the changes happening in her clan, believing they would now change for the better. Thus, she said she would like to thank him in some way. So Denosuke asked if she would like to work with him, which, much to Ulmandra's dismay, Alulu gladly accepted. Well guys, that was the recap of Salaryman ga Isekai. If you want me to bring the continuation next week, like and comment a lot below. I hope everything is well with you. Until next time.